that button. Thank you, lady. All right. So we're actually going to adding in an extra package as well, because I want to give you guys some additional tools for your current projects. Your current projects need to be a little more fine-tuned with your entities now in your databasing. So we're still going to do web and security. These have got security here. That's still the same. We still got JJWT 091. We're also just going to add in the Springboot starter dash validation. So this isn't actually used to be included in web, and it's no longer included. But it's a really useful tool because we can have the not null, we can have at email, we can add size constraints to our entities in our models. And so the main reason I want to do this is because on our user system is going to track the email account. And instead of us having to try to validate that our users are giving us actual emails, we'll let Springboot validation confirm that it's a valid email format. It will not check to see if it's an actual email account, like it won't actually doing some SMTP validation, but it will at least say, is this in an email format that has an at symbol, one or two, at least one character, and a dot, and then at least another character. So it's going to do like some sort of formatting where it says they have characters, an at symbol, characters, a dot, and then more characters in that kind of format, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what this is going to do for us. It's going to give us access to those kind of tools, and again, also access to not null or not blank tools.
Is that going to give us? Does that give us access to the pattern annotation?
I believe it does. I don't know all the annotations, but I think the pattern might be in there. I know that I know we have certain patterns. I don't know if I've used the regex patterns because I try to avoid regex.
No, there's one you can use pattern. You can like make an email it's simple. You put like an email standard or something. It's not regex. It's like
could be.
Pattern, but
yeah, I would expect that in there. This is where all that stuff is. Where you can add validator annotations to your entity fields so they follow a certain format. That's the key item there. So you'll see some of those in a second. So again, if we take a look quick, again, everything else though is identical. There's nothing else new here. It's back to where before we did anything before authentication. The next thing we want to do, of course, is we are going to go ahead and update our application properties again, because we do have to add, I'm going to add back in that secret. Because if you're using my version of the repo, the JWT secret was added in after, so that got deleted as well. So did the Gradles. So that's why I'm showing this again. If you're using mine, these were deleted. So the security and JWT. So these are the three you need to add again.
Oh, I need that token.
Throw that in.
So wait, I'm getting your code from.
I'm also going to throw these three into web Zoom, which probably isn't going to look good actually, but try it. So these three implementations are also added to Zoom. So if you want to copy paste those into your build Gradle, you can do that as well.
I just typed the first two by hand. I didn't expect you to send them over.
I thought about it, but then Sergio just said he's now downloading my code now. So if I expect him to then type this out, I'm like, okay, that's going to take forever. Here you go.
Cool question. So we're using the branch again. This is the main, correct?
Main branch. Yep. I updated the main branch. Yep.
Okay, not the auth one. Got it.
Yeah. No, auth one is what we did the last 2 days.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought so, but I wanted to really make sure.
That's good to double check. Yep. This is going to be called auth 2. So speaking of which. So yeah, we're currently doing auth 2 now. So. Got it, Keith.
Don't forget to reboot it, man. Whoever copied.
Right. Yeah. When you add one of these things, I'm going to do that and that. You'll see that little symbol here popped up. Make sure to click that on yours so that it loads in all these items, and so you'll get the pre-filler filling out correctly. So make sure you do that. So as soon as you add these 3 lines, hit that elephant in the upper right. That pops up.
Yeah, that's a new thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. We're adding new packages, so we want to make sure we rebuild it. Thank you for that, Eridan. Good addition.
So those are basically links that pull in stuff from somewhere, yes?
Yeah, like I said, unfortunately, you guys didn't use NPM or anything like that. You didn't do node stuff, so you don't understand it fully. What it's doing is it's downloading those packages into your system. Into this folder here, it loads in those items we brought in. These are some of those packages. So some here, as well as in here, the external libraries.
External libraries.
That's where it is. Yep, that's what's showing. God. So these are all the packages and libraries that are being brought in by these items here.
And the back of, you can still
Looking
do
here.
this.
Where is it?
You can still do this now, but back in the old school but you could do this, but you could download the libraries and actually import them directly into your
There it is.
project yourself without using Gradle and stuff, but this
Right.
makes it so much
It's so much
easier.
easier, yeah. Because again, if
Yeah.
JSON Web Token needs something else, you don't
Yeah.
have to go download those other items first, which then, of course, those might need things as well. That's one of those things that these really help with is I want JWT. I don't know what JWT needs in order to work. Gradle will take care of that. It'll be like, oh, you want JWT. Well, JWT needs encryption and needs this math library as well. It uses these two other libraries, and that math library needs this big decimal library. So Gradle will go and download those 4 libraries of these external libraries, bring those in first, and then bring in JWT as well. That's what Gradle is doing for you. It's saving you that effort that all you need to do is put the last item in the list of what you need, and it will get all the upstream dependencies that item relies on. Makes your life easier. You can see it right there. There's our JSON Web Token JJWT 091 that we added. It's now here in the external libraries, just by adding this one line.
NPM makes it so easy for you to understand that.
Same thing, yep. NPM is similar to this. Yeah, you have the, what is it, node modules folder, right?
Yeah.
NPM has the node module folder. Gradle/IntelliJ has the external libraries folder.
And you notice in the external libraries, if you open that up once again, just to show them, you notice that right on the top, just go to the top, you notice that the actual JDK is an actual library in its own self.
Oh,
Yep.
So without that, nothing would run.
Well, we do java.util.
Yeah.
That's where it pulls it out of here.
That's what goes in there?
All, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where all those, yeah, see.
Oh, wow.
Where are you?
SQL. Oh, some of these are more libraries. These are
Yeah.
more libraries, but
so
yeah.
it could be nested somewhere in
Somewhere
there.
in there, yeah. It could be under Java base, most likely, but yeah.
Java base, Java util.
Java base, Java. How do you find that? There it is.
I got
And yeah, there's all those classes that we've been using. So we got
Oh,
currency in
that's
there,
where they are.
8. Where's the one we've done? Where's set or hash map? Oh, I just saw hash set. Where was it? There it is. Hash map and hash set. Remember those?
I was wondering where these are.
If we look, where's L? There's our link interface.
Hmm.
So there's the list interface. And if we go back to the top, there is our array list that uses the interface. I like how Matt's like fascinated by this. This is great.
I love this stuff. I love seeing where things are instead of
Yeah.
just abstractly being able to pull
Yeah.
things in. I like knowing where
So-
things are.
Found the candy shop.
If you wanted to, you could search for all those annotations. They are probably hiding into these under, where are they? These guys over here, the Spring Framework ones. So all those annotations we've been using, they're hiding somewhere in here. So you can definitely go looking for them, and you could technically learn how to make your own annotations. So it's definitely possible. I would not recommend it. It's unnecessary, but you could do it. Yeah, it's all there. That's really cool. I definitely find it fun too. Don't get me wrong. I find that exciting as well. Cool. Yeah, that's it. So there's some killing time. However, we're doing with the download. Good.
Can I see your application properties once, please?
Boop.
I also say there is a way of if you want to, you could build your own like libraries or your own
We can get into that later. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
you-
not going to cover that in class, but you can definitely learn how to do that. You can build your own
Yeah,
libraries.
you could build your own set of code and then just add it as an external library, and then you could just use it
Yep.
as like natural code as part of your package. It's just, pretty cool that you can do things like that.
100%. Anybody else need any more time? We're actually going to be adding stuff here. So let me know when you're ready.
I'm all set.
Cool. So one thing I want to clarify with this thing. So if you're not, I don't know if you've noticed, but what's happening here now under application properties, you can set application properties for certain packages. So these are all your Spring packages. This is for Spring JPA. This is for data source library of the JPA system. We can also do something called app properties. We can set properties that are for our application and not set in a way that is expected by a existing package. And so this one, I'm just going to do the item of our app. So I'm going to do app.jwt secret. So just like last time, we're going to put it here now instead. Equals. And what was the secret key we had last time? We want to use a different one.
Lost
No, it had
Mustang.
something with like the car with John Wick again.
Lost Mustang.
Lost Mustang. Use that again.
Pencil.
And even if you wanted to, what's that?
I think
Any?
you can use a pencil.
Pencil?
John Wick related.
Says he wants a utensil.
Oh, you're right. I forgot he did something with a pencil for a second there. Yeah, killed him with a pencil. I forgot about that one. Yep. We also can do, I'm just going to show you this one because this one can be useful again for anyone who wants to set an expiration. Instead of setting it where we set it last time, if you want to, you can actually set the JWT expiration as a secret key, and you put the time of expiration MS for milliseconds. And you can even put the timer here, so whatever it is. Now, of course, you can't do math here, so you would actually have to know the time frame. I pulled this from somewhere, and I can't remember off the top of my head now what that was. Damn it. 60 seconds. Oh, sorry, 100 milliseconds.
Is that
So
4
it's-
zeros or 5 zeros?
I typed 5. Yeah, 5 zeros.
My
So down
dyslexia, I
about
can't
100.
count that many sequential numbers.
All
Pretty
good.
sure that's seconds.
That's
Something.
milliseconds.
Or like
So I'm
the-
dividing by 100 milliseconds,
seconds
then
in a
by
day.
60 seconds. So that's 14,400 seconds divided by, wait, that's 60 seconds, so that's a minute, divided by 60 minutes for an hour. Yeah. Or 10 days. Did 10 days, I think. I think I did 1 too many zeros. I wanted 1 day, yeah. So that's actually a good way of expiring keys. Letting a key survive for like about a week or 10 days can be a good way of letting a key last. But yeah, that's all you gotta do. Take your 100 to just make sure that whatever you do is in milliseconds. So you want 10 days, you multiply 10 days by 24 hours, by 60 minutes, by 60 seconds, by 100 milliseconds, and that'll get you your time in milliseconds. So you can add this. We're actually not going to put that there again in my project. We are not going to expire the items, but I will show you again where this goes, just like I did before. What was that question, Sergio?
No, nothing. It's 5
Okay.
zeros.
Yes, 5 zeros for 10 days, 4 zeros for 1 day.
Put that back up on the screen again, the math. Thanks, I just want to take a picture. Thank you.
Okay. Again, all you gotta do is do time length. And if you, depending on what you pick, you could do years. So if your time length with years, you would then multiply by 365 to get days. Multiply by 24 to get hours. Multiply by 60 to get minutes. Multiply by 60 seconds. And then multiply again by 100 to get milliseconds. Put the MS there so you can see it matches that. So depending on what time frame you start with, you just start with there. You could also change this to years, or I don't want to do this instead. So years to days, or weeks times 7 equals days. So whatever your time frame is, let's say you want to do 3 weeks, you would do 3 times 7 times 24 times 60 times 60 times 100. So 3 weeks would be that. If you want to do a year, you would do 1 times 365 times 24 times 60 times 60 times 100. Months. That one as well. So weeks, and we'll also do.
Google has a nice a table that you can do that math.
We'll do that. That way it's easier. So these are your 3 ways of converting days. And yeah, Google probably has something that's nice. I'm just giving you guys this because it's good to know this stuff off the top of your head because we don't always want to go to Google for it. But yeah, these are your nice little mathematics to get your milliseconds. So
Let's do eons.
what's an eon?
What
Is
is
that
it?
an actual, like flat number?
I think so.
Really? Oh, I didn't know it was.
I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. Decade though is decade, but that's
Yeah,
10.
decade is 10, but you would just do decade times
Yeah.
10 times 365 times 7. Sorry,
1
times
billion years.
10 billion years.
One
Eon's a
billion-
billion.
An eon is 1 billion years.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yes.
No,
I don't think we need to expire stuff in billions of years. That person who's using your system is long dead. So
that's a great token. I've noticed that the
CLI
comments for
tracker.
this kind of page are different. Do you know what kind of code this is?
not off the top of my
Dot
head.
properties code.
It's not that syntax. Yes, it's the dot properties file, but it does have a certain syntax. I feel like it might be a README kind of styling, but I can't remember, or a YAML styling. It feels very YAML to me, which is a competitor to JSON, by the way. YAML is a competitor to
okay.
JSON. YAML follows Python type syntaxing where white space matters instead of curly brackets and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
White space of hell.
so yeah, like I said before, Python does not use a lot of curly brackets and stuff like that. Python just uses indentation and line returns. YAML is similar. Doesn't use curly brackets and stuff. It uses indentations and line returns in order to identify its bracketing or nesting.
ew.
Yeah, I personally like the brackets, but at the same time, I can't deny that YAML is easier to type and does have less bandwidth because there's less characters. You also don't need the double quotes.
Yeah, but those YAML files though. Oh, you didn't put that one little space in that indentation. down
Oh,
the-
right. I forgot to mention that. Yeah. By the way, yeah, you can't use tabs. You have to use soft tabs or spaces. If you use tabs, those are counted as a single space and that can throw it off. So Python, at least, yes, Python can recognize tabbing and soft tabbing. YAML only recognizes soft tabbing. So do you need to be aware of that? Yeah, again, not important for this. So
Yeah.
I'll leave this stuff here for you guys for noting. And again, this I'm going to leave here just like last time. I will comment out the code for expiration, but I'm not going to be expiring our tokens for our project, just that they're reusable every day in class. I don't have to keep logging in every class. That's just going to make my life a little easier.
What's the kind of the short on the short thing on the pros and cons on using this version versus just what we did last time and just did the JWT secret?
So really it's just, this is just better practice by identifying that it's a app specific property.
Okay.
So that it's app specific. So you're showing that this is part of your app, that it's not being used by any library. So it's just good practice. You don't
Okay.
need to do this, but I did forget to point out this nice syntactic sugar that, or not really syntactic sugar, but good policy, clean code.
I
in a way.
didn't know you could do that. That's cool. That's
That's part of the thing I want to show too. Yeah. Clean code. This just shows that these items are not just random items, that they are variables or property values for your project, not for any other library or any other package. It's something that you're going to use.
Oh, okay, that's
So,
good.
and then these are a great place to also, again, store certain types of variables, including environment variables. And one thing you can do, of course, is get and ignore this item. If you actually set this up when you first started your project and actually get ignored this file, you could put API keys here. The problem, of course, is that we would then not be able to use this with OpenShift because we wouldn't be sending this file up through GitHub. So just be aware of that. Keep that in the back of your head. That's why environment variables are still useful. But we'll talk about that more in January. So don't worry about that right now. But this can be a good place to hide items that are local sensitive. So like this information right here, it's going to be different for every user potentially. Every one of you guys might have a different database configuration right here. So I might not want to include this property file, and so I might exclude it. At the same time, there is also the ability that Java has, I'm not going to cover, that you can have a development properties file, an application development properties file, and an application production properties file. And so that way, in case your local environment, this information is different than your production environment, you can change those out, swap those out. Make sure it only is the one you want. So really good. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this, but we're not going to get too deep into it. I just want to show this because again, this is good. This is proper formatting and it's something we want to start to do. So that's it for that. Let's go ahead and now look at the structure of our format now. So we're going to update the structure because I want things to be make a little more sense. And I've created the folders already, which you know what, I probably shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to delete those and redo those again so you guys can see it happen. Delete that. Delete that. So now it looks like what you guys had before, right? You have the controller, model, repositories, that's it, right?
Yes.
Good, I wanted to match up. So the first thing I'm going to add in is our payload folder. And so payload, and this is a term that is very commonly used in the industry. It's for, response payloads and request payloads. So anything that's part of the body of or anything that's part of a, when you're sending something across the internet, that data is usually called a payload. So in this case, the bodies of our either responses or requests, that's the payload of that request. So the body is the payload. It's a chunk of data, payload of data. It has similarities to, of course, shipping and stuff like that. They tend to call those things payloads as well. So we'll do the payload folder. And then we're going to have two more packages, one for requests and one for repository. Oh, sorry, for packages. One for requests and one for responses. Those words. So first, we're going to do payloads.requests. Or request, we'll just do request. And then when we do another new, if your system does this where it combines those two, you actually have to get rid of request in your new package and do response. You might need to do that. That's why I wanted to do that with you guys once. So you can see how it tries to do that double up on you. We don't want that. Just pay attention to that. Make sure that it looks like this when you finish.
Finally, I always struggle with that.
No worries. I figured that was another good reason to show this kind of stuff. Good. I'm finding all the issues you guys have been running into. Matt, you look confused. What's up?
Yeah, mine's giving me some problems. 1 second.
Creating packages? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'll give you a second. See if you figure out yourself. If not, you can always share your screen.
Let's dot. Oh, there we go. All right. Got it.
We're going to do another one. So another package. This is going to be called security. This is going to contain the security files and the stuff that helps with security that is security specific. It won't hold any security models or anything, but it's going to hold our security packages. And we have two things that are handling security technically, if you think about it. We have, of course, Spring and then JWT. So we have a package for the JWT specific security items. We got a new package again. And then we're just going to do services, which are the services required by Spring Security. All right.
JWT and what else? And services, you said.
I clicked on it too fast. Yeah. JWT and services. Yep.
Okay.
And the security package.
Gotcha.
Oh, kid. Did a child go cooing or something like that? All right, so that's gonna be our folder structure now. We've added payloads with request responses. We still have our models, controllers, and everything like that. One last package now, and this is where we're gonna start today. So we're gonna start differently. We're gonna start with our models. So hopefully that might help to make some sense. So under models, we're gonna do new package here, do auth. We'll create 3 items in here, but let's do the first one, the easy class, role. Yeah. So when you start a class with E, you're usually hinting this is an enumerator. And now we're going to do a quick just discussion on what an enumerator is. Jim probably likes this because Jim's used enumerators before. So it's like, hey, finally enumerators.
Enumerators. Well, we actually introduced those guys back in other ones too, so.
You've talked about them. I never actually did them. So I know you've talked about them before, but we've never done them yet. But I do want to make sure that you at least see one. So you at least have, you can at least have this in your tool belt again. So it's a class. Oh, no, it's not. I hit the wrong button. Sorry. Delete.
You can just switch it, but yeah.
I don't remember how to do that. And I always feel weird when I do that.
All
I
you do
want
is
to make
just
sure I do it
type
right
it-
from
all you
here.
do is just type it. Just type in the email by the,
But yeah, we just like how we always do class when I mean to do interface, I did class when I meant to do enum. So when an enum, role. Because now some of you might be thinking like, oh, my system has a user, a client, and an admin, right? Are those the only roles a site may ever actually have? Is that it? Just those two roles and that's it, nothing else?
usually have an admin at least.
At least, yeah, and that's the minimum, a user and an admin. But you can have a bunch of others. You can, especially in a social media site, you can have a user, a moderator, and an admin, right? A lot of social media sites have moderators, people who go in and just delete bad content or review bad content, but they can't actually modify the site, right? Can't make major changes to the system. They're users with a little extra capabilities. And some of your applications that you guys are building might want more than just the 2 standard roles. And so I want to make sure there's a system here that can make more roles. So we're going to, since they are constants, these are constant values in a class. So all this does is give a enumerator. So these are under the hood, these are numbers. And so instead of using strings to keep track of what these are, under the hood, it's numbers. But the system recognizes these numbers as words. And so the first one I'm going to do is role underscore user. Now, everywhere in our code, we're going to see role user. What's happening in the hood is this is 0 to the code and to memory. And that's a lot nicer, right? It's erole.0. And so the code and the computer can run a lot faster with this. This can be faster and easier to use. We'll do a role underscore moderator. Oh, these use commas, sorry. Just a list of items.
It's like this is like an array almost.
Kind of, yeah. It's just a list of items that that are connected in some way. All right. Next thing I want to clarify with roles, by the way. And this could be something that's different in your system. You could do this differently, but in a lot of systems, I want to make sure people understand how roles are usually done. Are you one and one thing only? Are you just a moderator, just an admin, just a user? Or could you be a combination? Keith is nodding. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, 100%. It could be a combination.
Yeah, most moderators are actually a user moderator. They're a user and a moderator. They are able to go on and act like a user, but then they can also do moderator items as well. So most admins are users, moderators, and admins. But at the same time, you can also have a person that's just an admin. They go in, they modify the site, they can add new languages, but they can't put posts. They can't like anything. They can't do what a user does. So we can have those types of things. We can have that kind of concept. And so by doing this, we're going to be able to create a role class and entity and do a many-to-many kind of correlation that a user can have many roles. And each role can have many users that are connected to it. But again, this is going to be a monodirectional relationship where it's a many-to-many, but the role doesn't care who it has. The role doesn't need to keep track of its users. The user record will keep track. The user record will map it and keep track of it, and we'll be able to run a search on that. But we don't need to list all the users under user or under moderator. So that's going to save us. And so you're going to see how this is set up, and I think it's going to be nice. Speaking of which, let's set up the new model. That's it for this one. That one's done. Simple, right?
Very.
Good start. Following along so far? All right, new class.
We're done.
Roll. And so this is going to be a standard process. So in this one, we're going to go up one and do our at entity. We'll do the standard one, ID, generated value, strategy, oh, generation type is one thing. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Generation type identity. Again, private. Okay. Integer, long. Nothing new there. Now I'm going to add in something a little different. We're actually going to bring in that name of the role, the name of the role. And so this is just going to be the table of the different roles that are available in our system that could be assigned to a user. And so that's all this is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do at enumerated. And from my understanding, this will actually cause JPA to actually bring this item in. Because by doing enumerated, it's going to look for this package and bring in a row for each one of the enumerated records automatically for us. We don't have to post these items. And this is where using this for like our languages system or anything like that could be useful. At enumerated, we just need to clarify what the enum type is. Is it a bunch of numbers? Is it a bunch of what type of stuff it is? So enum type. Most commonly, you're just going to do string. So this, just leave it as is. Don't worry about the others. You can definitely look up the others, but 9 times out of 10, string. One last thing I want to introduce you guys with this item is column size. By restricting column size, this can help reduce attacks. This can minimize your database file size, keep your file size of your database small, save storage space. So I just want to show you this concept. It's not important if you don't add it to your system, so don't worry about it. Column length equals usually 20. None of our, we should have no more than that, really. So this is just limiting the size of the data that can be stored there.
Mine, you say that the default is 265.
Right, which that's too many. That's why you don't need that. So we're shrinking that item because anything that's considered anything that when what's what I'm looking for, when MySQL creates a char column, yeah, it defaults to 256 characters. That means every row is going to reserve that much space in memory, regardless of whether or not you store information there or not.
Yeah, we don't need a whole
So-
byte there.
Yeah, that's not a byte. That is 256 characters.
Oh, it's 250
So-
characters. Okay.
Yes. So yeah,
I get-
it's long.
Yeah. Okay.
So that could take a good amount of space over time. So by limiting some of these, you're saving. It's good practice. This is one of those items that if you don't put it in, it's not going to hurt you in an array in an interview or anything like that. But if you add those things, they're gonna be like, that's nice. So it's one of those things where it's just kind of this extra little attack if you remember it. But if you forget it, don't panic. This is our second time through. I feel like I can add a couple of these little extra items for those of you who feel like you understand it a little better. You learn a little extra stuff and just sweeten the deal a little bit. Then we're just going to generate our standard stuff. So generate our constructor, none. Generate our constructor with our name. And last but not least, generate our getters and setters, both of them. Okay. That's it for your role. Straightforward, right? Nothing too complicated. We just give it a name. None of the details of what that role can do is stored in the database. That's stored in the logic of your site later on. We'll see how that works and which routes they can access. So we'll see that later on. All this is doing is just keeping track of what roles are available that can be assigned to a user. All this is doing, and doing a many-to-many relationships. That way, multiple users can have multiple roles, and multiple roles can be assigned to multiple users. Right? Again, it's one directional. You're not going to see me add any sort of many-to-many annotation here because the role, when we pull the role entity, or if you want to look at the role entity, we don't want to show those users underneath it. We want this to be a very clean object. The role doesn't care who's using it. The role doesn't care that Sergio, Keith, and Eridan are users, and Jim and Jeremy are moderators, and David and Travis and Keith are admins. Doesn't care. The role system doesn't need to know that. All right, let's create a last model. That's gonna be our friendly user model. And this is gonna be one of the models that you're gonna be using a lot. So what you see here is gonna be very similar moving forward. So let's go with it. Again, at entity. I'm going to introduce you guys to another item. Now, this is I just want to introduce you to this annotation if you want to be very explicit with how JPA handles something. So we've been allowing JPA to automatically create the tables, right? And let it kind of come up with the tables and the column names. But let's say you want to specify this. I can do at table. Name, I didn't import it, so it's not me. Name equals users. And this is normally what JPA will do. It'll create a plural form of the entity. This is you being explicit saying, this is what I want. I need this to be explicit because it's my security stuff. I want this very specific. You can also change this to be whatever you want. This doesn't have to be users. Just be aware of that. The table name does not have to match the entity. Tab over and do unique constraints. And this is where you can set up your unique column names that you want. You can then, of course, map those to the keys unless the constraints are the same name. So you're not going to actually see me enter anything special, but I just want to show that you can set the column names. And what JPA will do is look to see if that column name exists. You can, of course, map them later on. I'm not going to show how to do that. That's unnecessary to know how to do that. You really should make sure that your columns match your field names. But if you're worried of how JPA is going to name them, you can say, hey, I want it like this, and JPA will then try to match them together. So. The constraint, column names, their name. Why it's indented me again. I do a shift tab for some reason. Not email. No, we just want column. We just want username, actually. We're not going to use email. Our email is going to be our username. If you want to use username and email, just be aware that it's going to make you a little more complicated because then you have to decide, can multiple usernames have the same email? So could someone have more than one account with the same email, with the same username or not? If your email is your username, that person can only have one account and all they can do is then reset it, which can be good, which actually is probably a good idea. That's the way I like to do it. I like to use the email as username, but otherwise you can of course add it as well and add the email and username be separate items if you don't want people logging with their email account, because technically I know a lot of at least for all of you, I know you're created as email accounts. So if you're using that as username, I could go and at least attempt to log in as you on certain sites and at least try a couple times before I fail. Otherwise I'd have to know what username you want to use. So that's a reasoning to consider using usernames and emails separately, but at the same time, you're seeing it a lot more often that websites will just use your email as your username. So I'm going to introduce that concept. So. And here now, so again, this is just, and there's more you can do with this. You can also tell it what these column names are mapped to here if you want to, if you want to mismatch the column name with the field, but this is just, what you're doing here is you're explicitly saying, I want username, which is a very special field, to be this name and to map it correctly. So.
Are you adding anything else to that? Do you need a comma after username?
Not anymore, because we're not doing more than one. You can see what it says here. Specifies that a unique constraint is to be included in the general DDL for the primary and secondary table. So, cool. At ID, value, strategy equals information type. So same thing before. Private. Probably could have done integers on the roles now that I think about it, but whatever. We've been doing long this entire time, as we'll just keep doing it. And And now I'm going to introduce you to your first validation system. For our username, we never want somebody to be able to submit a new user account or new authentication account with an empty username, do we? We don't want username to ever be null, right? That's a bad thing. We also don't want it to be blank either. Null is one thing, but let's see. We know null is nothing, right?
Mhm.
What about this?
Yeah, it's an empty character.
True or false?
No, false.
True.
Right. But as far as we're concerned for username, true, right? As a username, we want that to be true, right?
Yes.
We want our system to consider these two things identical, that this is also not valid and potentially even this too, right? We want these items to all be the same.
Yes.
And so our new package we brought in, the validation package that we brought in, has a not. We have not null. We do have not null. We want not blank.
Uh-huh.
Not blank covers more than just null. So it'll also include empty strings. So not blank. Now that we also have this, I can also show you that we have, so I showed you last time we can do length with, if we don't have validation X, we can use column length equals 20. So that's one variation we have. And that means we just want the table size to be this. We also set max and min sizes for if we want something to be big. We don't want giant email accounts. Those can be annoying. If we can, of course, if we want, but we can also say no if we want to. So at size, part of validation. And this we can set mins and max. So in max, so we'll say max. I think emails can actually be pretty long, and we need to make sure we don't deny emails. So you know what? I'm actually not going to do that. Now that I think about it, I have my notes. I'm like, you know what? Wait a minute. We don't ever want to deny an email just because it's long. Now that I think about it, so we won't do that.
It'd be different if it was a raw username.
Exactly. We do want to make sure that this is an email account. So we do have this as well. We have an @email annotation thanks to validation. They have a bunch of validations in there. So I wish I looked through more, but
Oh,
That whole
value.
name is just used to be the king of Brazil, so we have to accept a full name.
What's that?
I typed in the chat.
Oh God, what did you just share?
That's the name of the last
Jesus.
emperor of Brazil. So we
Are
have to
those
accept
middle?
a username
Oh, wait,
that's
dead.
huge.
Dead.
That's
Dead.
like
So he's
that-
just keeping all of his family names going. So
Yeah.
Yes.
of.
The
And-
generations, yes.
It's
yeah.
like the Unicode character that I was talking about a few weeks ago, where there was the long Arabic Unicode character that's only
Yep.
one character long. So there are things that you have to take into
Yep.
account.
Yep. To an extent, again, you don't necessarily have to accept that if you don't want to, because credit cards only allow a certain amount of characters on the credit card. You just got to deal with that. Take it from someone who gets their last name cut off a lot of times. Or if I decide to, or if they do allow for a good amount of names, they definitely tend to almost never fit my IV because, and I don't mean IV like blood IV, I'm the fourth. So
No.
I like to put the IV to separate me from my dad. Just to be careful, because in the past, well, the funny story is that I'm on Facebook as Clifton Shonier. My dad is actually Cliff Shonier on Facebook because I use Facebook for professional use. I don't really care for personal. And so apparently I found out from my father that during the beginning of Grid, as a couple students had actually decided to friend him. Do you not look at the picture? That does not look like me. So he looks a little older and he's a little bald. Not sure how you guys
Cliff.
confused me. What?
Cliff.
I'm not bald. And I don't wear glasses. Anyway, so we got that.
Now.
Apparently, some of the students apparently thought I did. So we got not blank and an email. So that means if we try to save a username that is not in a valid email format, our system will instantly decline it when we try to save that item. And so our system will deny that save and send back a failure, which is really, really nice. We're also going to do our password field. So and again, we never want a blank password. That's bad security, right? So not blank. And the password, we can set a min and max, saying, hey, a min password plus a max password. So Now we'll do size. Now I can do the explanation of that. So min, we'll say you must have a minimum of 5 characters for your password. So we'll set that, of course, on the front end too. So on the front end, people know they have to enter five characters at minimum. But again, if they try to bypass our front end and force through a request to our system, our back end will also catch it and kick it back as well. So always remember that any validation you have on your front end is not secure. Front end validation does not ensure you get correct data. As all of you now realize, a lot of those requests you send out, you could send out the exact same requests through Postman if you knew the URL and the JSON format. And so now you can bypass that form and just send the data. And if you, in that case, you could, bypass some of the form validation that's on that front end. And so that's why it's important to make sure we do have some backend validation as well. Is that important for you to do for version 1.0? No, but if you think of these as you're building it up, go for it. So min, we'll say 5 with a max. We'll say, we'll let them be pretty secure. We'll give them 100 characters max. If they write out a 100 character password, have at it. If you use that name that Eridan shared as your password, fine. Power to you.
Eridan actually wrote it down from memory.
I would hope not, because that means he's been typing that for a while and was not paying attention to class. Not even,
Google is a
while
friend.
I was like, while impressive, the time it would take to write that is not worth you wasting that time to do that.
Oh, especially with those special accented characters. Oh man.
Mac makes it a little easier to type. I'll give it that, but I don't know how to do that C in the last one, that brag and cha. I don't know how to do that one. But I recognize the formatting because I recognize the format of that because my wife has the whole connotation with her family and our father and mother's names. So Almanzar de Comas, and I'm like, why de? I'm like, oh, that's your hyphen. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Back in the day, they used it to just keep on adding names. They would not. It's not.
I will
like
say I'm kind of surprised she's considering not doing that because my last name is already long enough, and she would end up keeping Almanzar, so she'd be Shonya de Almanzar, and she's like, that's long enough. I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with that. She already has enough issues with Almanzar de Comas, and Comas is not long. So she's tempted to just go Shonya. We'll see. String password. There we go. And then, of course, we need to set up the many-to-many. So we're going to set up that role. This, of course, seems very familiar. Fetch type lazy at join table. And the reason why I add the space here, you'll see it in a second. I actually found a good formatting for this that makes it look kind of nice. So the name equals it. Then you just jump back in. Let's drop off for a second there. There, underscore roles. I didn't mean to do capitals there. Common syntax, you'll see that. I'm gonna enter, and then if I tab, not there. Why did it put me on the other side of the parenthesis? Tab. That third tab will put me in line with the N. So that's why that space is nice. And columns equals at join column. Equals user ID. I'm gonna tab. Inverse join columns at join column. So very familiar, very similar, nothing new there. And we just do private set role catch that. We know where these came from now.
Yes, we do.
Yep. Nothing new there, right?
Do we have to
Overall-
do we have to assign that a new hash set, or can we let the code decide that?
Again, it's one of those things that you can let it. I've done it both ways. I know this in the tutorial I recently watched, they actually initialized it. So
Okay.
I haven't seen any difference between these personally. So I'm gonna leave it for here. It's just that if you do add it in once, you don't feel wrong adding it. And if you don't add it, it's not wrong either, because we have it in the other systems where it's not added. So I've seen it both ways. And it seems to work in both. So I just, for some reason, had it in my notes to do it. So I followed
Sure.
along. So. And we're going to just generate our normal stuff. So generate constructor, none. That's going to be, honestly, the more you do this, that should become second nature for you to type, to click those very soon. And I gotta stop double hitting the shift key when I'm in the enter key. Generate constructor, username and password. We do not include our lists in the constructor, so do be aware of that. So just username and password, no ID, no lists. Those are complex. You're never going to be, again, you're never going to be expecting a list to be sent to you. You're going to be expecting a list of items or things to add to an existing item, not the list itself of what it should be usually. To add or remove. And then last but not least, our setters and getters for everything. All right. I'll give everybody a second to make sure you get all that in. Later on, though, we will add the connection to connect the user to a profile, by the way. We're not going to do that yet. We don't want to connect this to the developer yet. We will be adding it. And this will, again, be a one directional. This will be from user to developer. Developer won't know the user connected to it. So we will, because we do not want that the user object getting sent down to the front end. We want the developer account being sent down. We never want the user details being sent down to the front end.
So far, I'm liking this approach a lot better because I'm actually keeping up with what's going on.
Good to hear. The next file, of course, is going to be the first annoying one, but oh no, not yet. We're going to do the repositories first.
Okay.
But then we're going to create our first annoying one. But this time I'm going to start with the web security configure or adapter. So the web security config. Sorry, me starting with that. I think that might be easier to start in that direction instead. Ooh, I also have an image for you guys that can showcase kind of what we're going to be building actually in a concept. Yeah. Here. So while you guys are finishing up, this is kind of what we're going through to eventually create all this stuff. So we have our controller, our repository for our items. We're going to create user and role repository. We're going to have an auth controller. We're not going to actually create the test controller. We're still going to create most of the items that we created last time. So we're going to create, we have a web security config adapter or a web security config. That's what we did last time, the last thing we did, but it's going to do this first this time. We'll still have an entry point so that it knows to validate our token. We still have to do that username password authentication token process because that's what Spring requires in order to work right. We are going to create a one request for a filter that uses the auth controller. The user details and user details service is still a thing, and our password encoder, which again is just a single line. We saw that, and authentication manager. So we're still going to create these things, but I'm going through it a different way that might make it a little easier, and I'm going to be able to explain it better as we go through it. I do like this approach. We're going through it a little better. So anyway, anybody need more time on the models? All right, let's move on to the two repositories we need. And what I want to do here is introduce you guys to a couple more of the.
I'm actually, excuse me, I'm having a problem.
What is it?
Getting an error message. I just need to have a quick look at it. I don't understand why I'm getting this error message.
Share.
Screen. Oh, where is it?
I don't see yet.
I don't know. Is this it right here?
There it is, I think. I'm not sure. It just, I see a giant folder structure right now.
Is this it right here? This is it right here.
I think so, but just your project folder thing is really, really massive, and I'm not sure why. Oh, God.
It's right down
It's
here.
on the bottom now.
Yeah, it's down here.
Here.
I'm getting this, yeah, this stupid Zoom bar. I hate this thing so much. It's always in the way.
Oh, I know, John. I can't see that, so I don't know what you're talking about. But
You're the one with such a screen sharing and a jam.
yeah,
Yeah.
No way. Again, this thing is you cannot do annotations aren't allowed here.
Hold on, look. Above stuff is all correct. Usually they'll say that if you are
Does
in
your
the middle,
user
if
have
you're
a closing bracket?
user. Yep.
Oh, it does.
Right there. Hold on. I'm
I
looking
took
through.
out all the.
That's
all-
what I'm expecting too. That there's something that's not matching up right. Looks like it is. You have the semicolon.
Yeah, even if I just go here, even if I just like decide just to comment this out, it's still telling me this is annotation is not allowed here.
Uncommented again, and just try moving it above password.
On line 34, after roll, you don't have a name.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't. And then you can't put a annotation next to a variable that isn't valid. Nope, he's right. So no, yeah, that's good. Move that over. But on line 34, Travis got it right 100%. Your role is supposed to be set roll rolls.
Oh, rolls here.
Nope, roll rolls.
You
You
have
didn't
your
give a name to the set yet.
you got your variable data type set, but you don't have an identifier.
Oh, rolls. Oh, roll here, rolls.
Space again. That should do it.
Oh, or
All right, thanks.
not. Oh, you got to bring in hash set.
Bring that back in again. Okay, cool, thanks.
Nice catch, Travis.
Thank you, Travis.
All right, anybody else? All good? All right, let's create our repositories. So in our repository, we'll go ahead and start with the user repository. Remember to hit interface, don't hit enter right away like I usually do.
Did you put the roles in the constructor?
We did the same things. Yeah, no, roles is not in constructor, just username and password in constructor.
But you're getting a setter and getter on that? No?
Yes, so setter getter on everything. Constructor is only the static fields, only the fields, no lists,
Yeah.
arrays, and no ID.
Right, yeah, it's just the constructor just has username and password only.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
General rule of thumb for a constructor: do not include IDs, and do not include any lists, sets, and don't include any collections in the constructor. So, user repository interface. We're going to extend the repository. That's going to be user, comma, import user. And make sure at the top it's the geeky likes models auth user. Make sure it's the correct package and not the one from Spring Security. And so think about this. We already know, yes, we can search our users by IDs. But when a user is logging in, what are they going to provide us?
The username.
The password?
Oh, password. Right.
True, but again, are we going to be able to search by password?
Oh,
Should we search by password?
no,
I
that's a
got
bad
this
idea.
password. Should I find the user account by the password? You know, I don't know who this is, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull Matt's account because the password matches Matt's account, even though Travis is the one logging in. So yes, we can search by password. Yes, we have password. We also, the user is also going to give, yes, the user will give us the username and their password.
Mhm.
We want to find the user, not by their ID, do we?
No.
We want to be able to find them by username.
Yes.
Now, is there a guarantee? So we
You
could
are
do,
right.
of course, user find by username. Now, should we trust that we're always going to find a user though?
No.
No.
So what should we identify this as?
And optional.
Good. Yes, I was wondering if you were going to remember that item. Optional user. So this method has potential to return a none. So we're going to search by username, but we may not find it. Again, find by means we're going to find one. The very first one that triggers it will be correct, and then the field we're searching under, and then the item for that field. Another useful item that I want to introduce you guys that GPA includes is Boolean searches, or contains, or exists. So they have an existing, because we want to make sure that if a user already exists or username already exists, we don't create another one, and we can also just check to see if something exists quick before we do anything else. And so we have a concept of Boolean. We can do exists by, and then a field to search by. So during the registration process, we can go and say, hey, does this person exist already? Yes, you need to log in. You're not creating. We can just send back a you already exist, log in, or click forgot password. And so we can do this quick. This will also be useful if you just had to do username and emails and you don't want the person to have multiple accounts per email. Well, one-to-one, you can do a exist by username and an exist by email and say, oh, you already have this account, this username is already taken, or you already have an account, log back in. So if you search by the username and that username is already taken, you can tell them this already exists. You can't create this account, or you already have an account, reset your password, or ask for your username, however you want to handle it. So this is a very useful item because it doesn't return any data and it just checks to see, does at least one row exist with this search up? Yes or no, true or false. And so really useful, just conditional we can use, other than doing a find by username and checking if empty or not. And because in certain situations, this can be excessive, pulling down a whole user record, we can just say, hey, does it exist? So this is a couple useful tools as well for your JPA system. Well, that's pretty much good, right? Like we said, we're not going to search by, we're not going to search for their role. We're not going to pull their roles. We can't pull the roles. We might want to pull the users by a role, but no, I think we're going to do that in the role thing. Yeah, I'll show that. No, you don't. We can always pull. We can pull the roles by the user because we have that in here. So when we do pull the user, if we do pull the user record, we will see the roles. So we don't need to do a find user by role. We could always add that if you want to, but not necessary. That's nothing I'm thinking we would need to do. So if you decide to, you can always add that later. But we do want to do a repository because we might want to find the role or get the roles by a user too, or by the find a role by name, right? So we want to do that. So we will pull our roles by name. Class, interface, role, repository. Ends, JPA, repository. And again, this is going to be, that's not where I want to be, right there. It's roll, right? Yeah, roll, not you roll, roll. Roll long. There's that import, enter key.
I don't know
And the only one I'm going to do here
funny.
is,
It's so funny about roll long. I don't know.
what is it?
Something sounded funny about roll long.
I was getting it too, but I couldn't come up with a
I don't know why. It just,
remark, so it just didn't
just
happen.
sounds funny.
All right, roll sounds funny. Roll long.
No,
Oh.
roll long sounds funny. Yeah.
Roll on, man. Roll long. Got it. I'm going to do an optional roll. I'm going to find by name. Bring in the optional again.
Not by Bane, by name.
Java util, right? I did last time, yeah. And then what data type we're going to put here? String or what?
No, it's gonna be an enum, right?
Not enum, but e what?
E-roll.
Oh,
Close.
e-roll.
Yep. Now you know e-roll, which is close enough. I'll give you that one. E-roll name.
Ah.
And how you would send that is you would just do e-roll dot and then pick the name. Yeah, you'll see. Again, we'll get to this point eventually. You'll see how it works. I don't want to jump ahead. We'll get to that when it fits. So. Feel good so far? Feeling a little nicer with this one?
So far, yeah.
Already getting ideas on how you're gonna be able to use these pieces at least in your project. So these pieces feel familiar, right?
Yeah.
So these pieces are pretty templatey, but at the same time, these ones are the ones that are going to be most modifiable for your site. If you want to add more user restrictive data, you can add that to the user model. If you want to add more roles, add it to the e-role, and your role system's already set up and good to go. Very useful on that. So very little you have to do there. Very little you have to do here. Again, the only really thing for, in my mind, like with the user item here, you might want to keep track of something like login attempts. If you want to be really security, you could even maybe put some like blocked IPs or a locked account. So if you want to lock down the account, a soft deletion account or a banned account, you can do that kind of stuff. Add those fields here, so you can do that kind of stuff. So something we might want to add for our social media, yeah, ban accounts. So if someone tries to sign up with the same email account, you're like, no, you're banned. You posted inappropriate stuff to the social media account. You're locked out. No, not happening. Create a new email account at least. So we can do that. So there's more you can add to these, and this is where you're gonna have a little more freedom in it. But what we have here is a pretty good template to start with. It's a good starting point. I have the items in here very minimal so that you can reuse a lot of these packages, these models. I'm gonna start configuring our Spring Security now. So now I'm gonna start getting into some of the more confusing stuff, but I'm gonna do a different approach this time. All right. We're actually going to create some things by using comments before they exist. So then we're going to create them as we go. So as we need certain things in our files, we're then going to go create those at the time so you can see them as they make sense. So as we go through the Spring Security, the web security config file, we are going to need that auth point entry file. When we hit that point, we'll go make that so you know why we're making it. You can see that point where it makes sense. I'm going to try that this time. All right.
Okay.
See if that helps to make this a little more understandable what's happening. So under security, this is not a service and it's not GPT. This is the security config file. So this is actually just going to go under security. This is going to be the first time you're going to see a package with two other packages, but yet a file in here as well. It's going to be a class inside the security package with two other packages inside. Kind of what our app application does for the whole overall of everything else. So right click on security, new class, web security. Okay. That should sound familiar. Add some annotations first. And so these ones, again, these are standard annotations. Include these by default. At configuration, at enable web security, at enable global method security. I'm going to add a couple more items here that you can take a look at what you can do. There are other things you can include. We're going to comment some of these out, but these are things you can add if you want. Say this. Where is it? Yeah. So enable global security provides AOP security on methods. You can and enables pre-authorized, post-authorized, and can support other types of items. So we can support a lot of these items. For example, what was I looking at? There's the secure enabled, JSR 205 enabled, but these are default disabled by default. I'm actually going to keep those. You know, I'm not going to add those. I don't want to confuse you guys too much. We are going to do the pre-post enabled true. We do want that set. So before a post occurs, we want to test it. Make sure we go through our authentication if needed. So we don't want to accept the data in case there's something malicious in there. This is going to extend our web security configurer adapter. And so you remember that little, oh, I closed that tab. Dang it, I shouldn't have closed that. That didn't bring over. Come on, there it is. This is what we're creating here. This adapter is going to be our web security config file that we're creating now. So Spring Security needs this. We're creating a custom one. There's a default one built in that it uses, which again, you guys saw how that works. It pulls up that login screen when you first try to use the site. We don't want that. So what we're doing now is we're creating our own web security config adapter called web security config that's going to overwrite that behavior and bring in new behavior. A lot of this stuff here, though, is default behavior or kind of just standardized information, especially when you're using what we're going to be doing with our tokens and stuff like that. So first thing, at AutoWired, user detail service. And we're going to get a new version of this. We need our own user detail service. This is the first item we're going to do break out from right away. So straight ahead, we already need something that we need a custom version of. We need our own custom user detail service implementation. All right. That item quick. There it is. I'll pull that over here so you can see where we were and what we need to make next. So the first thing we need, like I said, is a user detail service. But no, actually, before we create it, let me use the built-in system for the moment, or a generic, so you can see where it's used. Actually, before we do that, yeah, I'm gonna do that instead. Hold on. Service. AutoWire again. Private auth entry point. Entry point. We're going to call this one an unauthorized handler. That's really what this is going to do. This is going to handle unauthorized account items and kick them out. That's really what this thing is going to be doing. This authorization entry point is going to handle unauthorized users and say no. Again, we'll create that when we actually go to use it, when we go to bring it in our code. Right now, we're just initializing it or saying that this thing exists, even though we haven't created our own. We're actually going to create a new one ourselves. But this thing already exists inside of JWT. I'm sorry, inside of Spring Security. We're going to create a new one. I want to use theirs by default to start off. Next up, we have a bean. And not really important for you to know what a bean is. These are just part of the system, and a lot of the things we are using are beans. If I look here, it indicates that a method produces a bean to be managed by the Spring container. That's really what it is. Spring container uses beans, and a lot of items make them, but sometimes they're not obvious. A lot of the things we use are alternative terms for beans. So at container is also a bean creator, but it's not explicit. We're using it to create a container, and there are beans. At configuration, this most likely has the @bean annotation in there somewhere, so we don't need to include it. What we're about to create isn't obviously a bean, it's just a method. We need to let Spring know that it needs to put it in the container, that it needs to evaluate it and bring it in. By adding @bean, we're telling Spring container Spring to pull this in, to enable it. Public auth filter. And doesn't yet exist. We have to create that because that's a token filter that we're going to create. So we're actually going to create this first. JWT token filter. You guys remember the filter system, right? We talked about that last time. So talk about filters are a tool that allows us to, as a request comes through Spring, it goes through an entry point system, then it goes into a filtering system where we can do things before it hits the routes, before it hits the controllers. So filters happen before the controllers. I actually think filters also happen before the entry point, actually, sorry. So you get the filters first, that filter and massage the data of, it's a weird way to how to describe it, but it manipulates, probably a better word than massage, but it manipulates or examines or does checks on the request as it comes through before hitting the route. And these are things that can run on multiple routes. We can't necessarily do that in the route system other than copy and pasting the same code. We don't have to do that, right? Without a filter, if we wanted something to happen on every route, we'd have to add that code to every route, correct?
Okay.
Makes sense, right? We wanted a certain bit of logic to happen on every route. Currently, the only way you guys could do that is by adding it to every route.
Mm-hmm.
a filter is something that can occur on every request as it comes in. And we can run it on every request if we want. And it happens before when the request comes in, it hits Spring. Spring says, hey, I got a request. It says, okay, let me send it through the filter chain that I have. I'm going to send it through all of these methods that are part of my filter chain. I have a nice collection of filters. I'm going to send it through the filter chain. And at the end, I'll then have a finished product that I can then send to the route if it doesn't get kicked out beforehand. So that's what this allows us to do. So we're going to leave this broken for the moment. Again, I want to actually build this when we go use it in the config. This is just initializing it, and we have to do it like this because we need to make this a bean. This result here needs to be a bean. So that's why we do it like this, instead of just doing it inline where it's required. So, again, this is just how you need to do it. Next up, we have to override some of the default behavior of web security config adapter. So at override public void figure location manager builder, this fun thing. And so I should bring this over because we're not done here. Actually, why am I doing it over there? I don't know. I probably am being weird. That's probably not going to look good on the video now that I realized it, because I just remember you guys mentioned that the cameras are on over there on that side, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they are.
Ah, crap.
I was gonna
Sorry about
mention
that.
something, but
Yeah, very sure. Feel free to do that. All right. So we added, so not a big deal. Not only we added a whole bunch of code, God, but we remember that Apple authentication manager that we had a bunch of errors with last time over the previous 2 days. We kept getting told we didn't have an authentication manager. Well, again, this whole method is about building an authentication manager, right, and helping with that. So manager. Actually, we do want to call it authentication manager build. Yeah, that's better. And this one can throw an exception. This is not execution exception, just an exception. This right here, again, a standard code. So this is not going to adjust very much in what you do. Honestly, in the line of code we're going to add is not going to adjust much. There are other configurations or settings you can set in here. We're not going to change much of them. All I'm going to do here is do authentication manager builder dot user detail service. Until it use that user detail service that we created up here. And so now we're telling it to use this user detail service, not the built-in one that you have. So normally this would be using the normal built user detail service, which we are currently using here. So this is using the Spring Security user detail service. We want to tell our authentication system to use our user detail service. So guess what we're going to do now? We're going to go build our user detail service now. So now we know where it's going to be used, that we're going to tell our system to use it. Let's go build our user detail service. We'll pull up that in my code and we'll go build that. Hold on. All right. It's in the right locations. Yes. So our services, we're going to do new Java class, user details. We'll call this implementation, impl. This is our implementation of the user details system service. We create this along with a service implementation as well. So this is going to be our user details system. Actually, let me do the same thing we're doing now. User details service. We'll do that first because in here we're going to need our own version of the user details. We'll build that again once we hit that point. So again, I'm trying to go this other direction for you guys so you can see how it goes. Hopefully this will make more sense as we see where we need it, when we need it. So User details, services. Here we go. It is a class. Goof that up. So one thing we remember from last time, because this is a service, our annotation is going to be service. So that is a item that is common. Again, if there's ever an item that doesn't have either service or entity or configuration or one of those, it's a component. If it's not one of those ones, but again, are you expected to know these? No. Follow the documentation. So for this, follow what I've shown you. Use this code as your guideline. This is another one that pretty much is just going to be used as is. Very little changes are going to occur here. So, subclass user details service implementation implements user detail service. And we see how this kind of looks together. User detail service implementation implements user detail service. This is our implementation of the user detail service implementation. So, we'll do an auto wired. We'll bring in the user repository because what we're going to use here is our user model. So we're going to bring in our model, user repository. I'm going to override digging. There we go. Public user details. Load. User by user. So you remember that method from last time. This is the thing we need to be overridden and configured by us, because how we want to load the user is different from how Spring is going to load the user. We don't want to have the Spring system use its session system for loading users and saving users and all that stuff. We want to use our own user systems. We need to tell Spring how to find our users through our user repository. And again, what user detail service is going to do is going to send us, not string, their name. And then we can throw. This time we're not going to do I double checked it to make sure we actually don't need that disabled item. I thought we did. We actually don't need it, and we also don't have to catch it here. We can just throw it and let Spring handle it. So I'm going to throw user name not found exception. So we actually don't have to catch it like we did last time. I double checked that because I'm like, I feel like this is excessive. I don't want to handle it. So in this case, we're actually going to let Spring handle it just like normal. Like we know that if the code we write throws this item, we can either we need to handle it with a try catch and then do something, or we can just let Spring know or let Java know that our method will rethrow it and just say, hey, I got it. Okay, throw it back over its shoulder. Say, yeah, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to throw it back up. Again, throwing back up just sounds great to say. Great visual, right? So
visceral.
Exactly. So in this case,
Like
we're going to do, what's that?
back up to the top of the chain.
Yep.
And then
Throw
hold
back
it
to the, yeah, throw back up the chain. Yeah.
Like human centipede stuff.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
no. Oh,
Someone had to go there. There you go, Travis. Gave that image to everybody, like except for those who haven't ever watched the movie. So they're
I
safe.
always wanted to watch that movie. I was gonna say.
I have not. I think I'm okay with it. Pleasure, sure.
you're not missing anything of value.
Was that
Yep.
movie any worse or different than Eraserhead?
Not talking about movies. Stay focused.
Thank you,
Yeah,
because that's
So,
a tangent I will get lost in.
I know.
I was just wondering yes or no. I didn't want to go down a tangent. Just wanted
No
yes or
tangents. Stay with me. So load user by username. We're going to pull a user out of our repository. So this is where it's going to look like our code now. This is where you're going to add code that is specific to your system. In this case, we're going to pull a user repository dot find by username. And we can then, what we can do, what's really cool here is we can use our or else throw method again. Because we do want, if we don't find it, and I didn't import for some reason.
Can we?
Oh, I don't want to import the, make sure when you do this, you import the geeky likes one. Well, again, we can throw a username not found exception. We've been throwing the exception before where we do our, what is it? Our exception request, what it was, right? What was it called again? Go back to our developer repository. No, not repository. A little bit called controller. Developer controller. We're doing a response status exception. So that's when we were throwing in our or else throw. We don't necessarily have to throw this item. We can throw any sort of exception. And specifically, though, in this case, we're gonna want to throw the exception that we told our system it will throw. Our username not found. So we do this. Throw. Parentheses, arrow. And again, this is called a lambda expression. So just be aware of that. If you hear that term, that's what this is, a method inside of a method. So the method, a nameless method inside of a method parameter. So we're sending a method to the function. Sorry, we're sending a method to the method. That's the word. So, and lambda expression is what you call a nameless method in Java. Do username not found exception. User. I think that's all we need for that one. Just a string. Yeah, just a string. If you want, you can do user not found colon plus username. You do that if you want. That's fine. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Now, we do have a problem right here, don't we? So here we know we have a user. We have a user as of this line.
Mhm.
If I do this, is that good?
No.
Why?
It's giving you an error message.
Why am I getting an error message?
Because that's not the return type that it wanted.
Right. We're returning a user, but we need a user details. We need something that is akin to Spring Security, the user detail system. We can do those. We can create a, I feel like this is a very minimalistic concept, what's called a factory system. We can build a user details object based on our user. And so we're going to go ahead and create a new item called a user details implementation. This item will implement our user details. It's going to extend it or implement, actually, I'm trying to remember. We're going to extend it, right? No, implement. Yeah, we're going to implement. User details is a interface. Yeah, it is. Okay, good. So that's an
Final answer.
Yeah. Always remember, like, it's an interface. So we're gonna implement it. So that's why we also saying user detail implementation, because we want our own custom user detail implementation that uses our system, our setup. So tell class user details implementation. Simple. I'm going to put this under services because this is all part of Spring Security. Our system doesn't need this. Our system isn't requiring this. This is only needed by Spring Security. The only reason we have to do this is because Spring Security wants us to. This is going to very much feel like your user model. But it'll make more sense as we go. So implement user details. So what we're doing is we're making our own user details that follows along our repository. In order for this to work, we do have to remember, so I don't know if you remember this thing from before. I've been trying, I didn't really want to include this too much, but this might be familiar once I add it. All right, remember that thing? Serial version ID. User details is serialized by, what's it called? Spring Security. And here we just got to give it a number. Let's get it 1L. To be honest, I'm still trying to understand the serializable system and how it works. It hasn't been fully clear to me, but just be aware that that's a thing. That is pretty much just, that's required. Don't need to understand it. Just know you have to put it there. That's it. All right. Sound good? All right. Now I'm just going to bring in the other items we have, public, private, sorry, long ID. Private string name. Yeah. Excuse me. I'll do it at JSON ignore, just to be on the safe side. We shouldn't really be including this anyway, but just in case it somehow goes across the internet, this is one of those things you want to be safe. Just in case somehow someone does pull this data through Jackson, we're going to ignore password. We want to make sure that never gets sent, no matter what happens. Even though we have no intention to ever send this down, if somehow this does, we should ignore it. Make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. Next up is an item that's required by Spring Security. So these items are based on your model, really, except you do need a username and password. ID is based on your model, but any of these items will be based on your item. The next item is a private, and this is required by the implementation. Authority. Oh, whoops, not that. That goes. This is going to look very, very weird. Sorry. Extends.
Oh, goodness.
So what this says is that I will accept any object as long as that object extends granted authority. As long as that object qualifies this requirement. So it means I will accept a collection of granted authorities. I will accept any children of granted authorities. I will not accept any parents of granted authority though, because what I'm saying is that any object I get here must at least meet the requirements that granted authority has. It can have extra stuff, but it cannot have less. All right. We will talk a little bit more about this in January. When we go into interview questions about Java, we'll talk more about this because this is a really, there is a question about this, one of the HackerRank tests we have. So we will talk more about this concept. But all it's saying is that I will accept any object that qualifies this. So as long as that object has what granted authorities has, and I can use it as that, I'm fine with it. Good. Children and itself.
Just
Go ahead, Jim.
just for a quick thing, this basically just restricts it to only this area, to only granted authority and everything under it. So like if you try to pass a string through it, it will error out because it's not part of the granted authority class. You're just trying to pass. It's just within
Family,
that
I would say,
that
part of the
realm.
granted authority family.
Yeah, family only, yeah. So.
Now I'm going to go ahead and create the constructor. I can just use, oh wait, I can just use, yeah, I can just do a generator. I'm going to create a constructor with all these items. So.
Out of instinct, I made an empty one.
I don't blame you, but this isn't an entity, so yeah. We don't need that one this time though. So yeah, this is not an entity, so got that. This brings in everything there. Now we're going to create a method called build, and this is the important one. This is when we will do build a method, one of these based on our user class. And so we're going to create that. So next up, public user details, user details, right? Implementation. Yeah, we got to do implementation. We don't have these, right? I'm going to return, and we're going to return a static one because that's required. I forgot about that. Static. Oh no, this method is static, right? So we want to be able to access the build method without having to instantiate a user detail implementation, of course. But we're going to return an instanced user detail implementation. So that's what's really cool about this. This is what I say is kind of like a factory item. It's a builder class. So what it does is this class has a method that will build that item without having to instantiate it. So this build. And there, we're going to accept one of the things we can build is we can accept a user in order to build a user detail implementation. And again, we want to use our user, not the security core. Be very, very aware of this. Since we are currently working with, we've already imported a good number of Spring Framework security items. By default, this isn't going to recommend bringing in that one. You want to override and say, no, I want my auth model. So make sure you're very, very careful on that. Double check the top. Make sure it's Geeky Likes app models auth user. Make sure you don't want that wrong one. Then it won't work, and then you'll have a bug, and you'll have to tell me it's not working. We'll have to check. So, all right, so I'm going to build it. Now, how we do this? First line, pretty straightforward. List granted that. Enter bracket granted authorities equal user dot get roles dot stream. So what this does is going to allow us to iterate through an enum or through a collection one by one. It's another way of doing it. We're going to use the map method. And so, how to explain exactly how so this is one of the other methods to take a list and put it into another list, or to iterate through it another way in line as well. So map is a method that says map over or touch every element one by one, line by line, or piece by piece. So in this one, we're going to do role. I'm going to use a new lambda. So role, new, simple, granted authority. Role dot get name dot name. That's good. Name. Last but not least, dot collect. Collectors dot to list. All right. So it's a little bit going on here. Yeah, so you need to create a list of granted authorities because that is something that, again, Spring needs. Granted authorities, because this is going to be how we're going to later on, be able to figure out who you are. What do you have access to? So when Spring needs to decide whether or not you should have access to a route, it goes through the user details granted authority list to say, hey, do you have this role? Because these roles are the ones that are allowed access to this route. You're going to see that later as we get to that point. And so what we're doing here is we're going to create a list of authorities for this user, a list of what authorities they have. And to do that, we're going to iterate through our role in line. So we could technically build this. We could build a list and convert it later on, but this is another way of doing it, and it's in line, so it's a little better, and it's more real time. So we take a collection. We can use .stream. Feel free to look up more what .stream does. We can run it on a collection. We have a map. So, or we have a set, yeah. So on this is the set, so set has stream. With that, we created iteratable items. So I don't know if sets are iteratable now that I think about it. I think that's what we need to do it actually. I'm trying to remember now. I'll find out. Oh, that's not right. Let me roll. Thought so, yep. So see, you can't iterate through a set. Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, long. Oh, I didn't get ID. Damn it. How did it do that to me? Oh, wait, it does seem to let me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can't remember why again we use the stream system again. One is in line, so we don't have to do a for loop, and it makes sure that it doesn't get assigned until this all finishes. I will double check again why. I do know I've used it before, so and again I forgot that we never did, so I'm familiar with it, but I just know that it does that. It takes a collection, turns it into a streamable, a mappable item. The map is a method that allows us to, again, iterate, but provide a method for that. And then the returned item is a new collection. So we iterate through the collection, create a new collection in memory. So the result of this is a new collection. And so then we access that collection, collect, and we then convert it to a list. And so that's one of the benefits of map. Otherwise, we would actually, that's why we're doing it now that I think about it. Now, yeah. With the other system, we would do the for loop. We'd have to create our own collection, add things to it, and then add to it. And we would just, that would stay in a variable in our method. By doing this, we do not have we're not creating multiple variables. So there's a reason behind this. So pretty much all you need to know for this though really is just, honestly, as long as you're using the role system, you just copy and paste this. We're just pulling the roles out and creating a list of authorities. In a system that just has roles, you would just have one role. So you would just do a list of granted authorities and just create a list with one role, user that everybody has. And you would just assume everybody has the same role. We really wouldn't even need this granted authority. So be aware of that. So if you do decide to make one of your sites where there are no roles, just double check on that. Get that one. After that, after we create that granted authority, is the only thing we really need that we didn't already have for our user list, for our user details implementation. So with all that, our user account, our user here has everything else we need for this, right? We have ID, we have username, we have password. The only thing we didn't have for the constructor was the authorities. Well, we now made that. So, turn new user details implementation. User dot get ID. User dot username. User dot get password. That and then while that's all over there. Any questions on that?
Oh. No, looks good.
All right, good. We're not done yet, just you know.
No, we're not.
There's a couple more things we do need to override or finish up with. And that's just the getters and setters. So, all right, getter and setter. Check which ones we need. We need this one. We do need to get the ID. We need to hold on. We need a setter. I don't know if I want a setter for that. I don't want a setter, so we're just going to create a getter for that one. So for these over ID, username, and password. Oh, let's see. Oh, no, we don't. We don't want setters actually. Now that I think about it, we want getters. Yeah, we just want getters actually. What am I thinking? We're not going to set these. We're not going to change these. Generate getter. ID, username, password, and authorities. All right. We only want getters. We're never going to be changing these once they're created. They're pretty much static items, so we're not going to be changing them once we create them. So just getters, ID, username, password, and authorities. Okay. That's that. And there's a bunch of items we need to do that are just, these are just standard items that, if again, depending on how you want to do this, these are things you can change, but these are just required items for the user detail system. But I think we could just do this to make our life easier. Implement methods. Yep, these here. So the last thing we need are these four methods. Is account not expired? Non-expired, non-expired, great. Non-expired instead of not expired. Is account non-expired? Is account non-locked? Is credentials non-expired? And is enabled.boolean. And so again, that's where we had that. Remember in the previous item, we had that username in disabled exception we caught on. That's where this is. The locked system is disabled. We're just going to be saying it's true at all times. That is non-locked. It's true, so it's not locked. Same here, not expired, we're just going to send true. And our is equal. I'll show you how to set that up. And these might actually bring in the original code. Let's find out. I hope it does. Yes, it brings us a default code. So for these, we don't have any sort of expiration for our accounts. We're never going to be expiring our accounts, right? So true. If you want to expire accounts, put in there what the logic is that determines if your user account in your system is expired. So you would put your logic as to what makes an account expired, return false if it is expired and true if it is not expired. Same with locked. Let's say you have a locking system because again, the person has decided to be a malicious user or post bad things. You can have a locking system in your user item and then add that logic here saying, hey, just check if user.locked is that. So turn true though. Again, you wouldn't have access to the user. Just be aware you wouldn't have access to the user object here. So you'd want to add that as a parameter here. You would have locked or disabled or banned here in your fields, add it to your importer, bring it in here, and then you could then have it here saying, yep, if ban, return banned, or return not banned, I guess, because it's the opposite. Credentials not expired. So again, we're never going to expire our credentials either. So this is, the credentials are expired, but the account is fine. We're never going to be doing that. I actually don't really come up, I'm not really sure of an example of that. So I'm just going to go with that. I pretty much always would put true there. And then is enabled. Again, we don't have any sort of situation where our accounts are being disabled. So again, true. If you ever want any of these systems to be utilized by Spring Security, you can come in here, add your logic on how to test for this with your user model, user entity, and send true or false back, depending on the situation. But as long as if you're not using this feature, just return true. All right.
These are the kind of things you can put time frames on, right?
Totally could, yeah.
Okay.
And then I feel like though we're supposed to have equals.
Credentials. You didn't get your pledge pin, so you can't get into the club.
I expected it to bring in the is equals or the equals item. I'm gonna bring it in just because I need to. Methods equals object boolean. So bring this guy in. I'm trying to remember why, if I actually did need to override this, because it's in my notes and I just did it because that's what the guide showed. But now since I'm teaching you guys, there's a part of me that's tempted to be like, do I actually need to implement this? Because it looks like the standard like object equalizer. But here, let's go ahead and just look at it so you can see what one of these look like. So this is how you can override when you do a object equal object. Normally it's going to check the referencing. With this though, you can actually, the dot equals method. So you know how we have string dot equals? This concept. This is how you can adjust the logic to decide how you can compare one user against another user. Or in this case, a user details implementation against another user's details implementation. But use this concept, which you're about to see here, with others if you ever want to create a dot equals method for one of your objects, if you ever need to compare them. So think about some of the items you're going to be using in your project. And part of the reason why I'm actually okay with overriding this is some of you are dealing with stuff that you might need to compare. For example, math, so you might want to compare two records, see if they're equal, but you don't care if they're two different instantiations. You just want to see, are they the same record? Do they have the same artist and artist name, record name, and have the same song list? If they do, they're the same record, even though they're different instances and different owners and different like creation data, whatever it is. You're going to consider those equal though. They're equivalent items. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So some of the, again, some of the others, you might have stuff like that where the equality of two items is based on only specific items, not every single attribute, but specific attributes. So in this case, I'm going to do if this equal O. So what this means is object. So what this means is that if the object and this are the exact same instance, return true. That's what this one does. All right, so if I was sent myself, true. I don't even need to check any of the fields. If O equals null or class not equal to O object, I keep doing O. The common version you see there. Got pick class. False. So these are the two generic tests. You should always include these two lines with any dot equals really. If I am me, I don't need to check anything else. I'm true. If the references are the same, done, right? If I'm referencing the same object in memory, I'm done. If I am not an object, we're not the same. Null does not equal null, technically, in Java. Because null is nothing. Nothing is not equal to nothing. You're kind of getting theoretical in this world and getting a little bit into the ether with that kind of concept. Nothing is not equal to nothing, but equal is nothing. Nothing is nothing. So don't let your brain explode with that. Just understand that in Java, null is not equal to null. That's all you need to know. Or if the class of the object of our object, if our object's class is not the same as the class that was sent to us, well, they're not equal. They're different things. They're different classes. Now, again, that might be something you don't care about. You might want to have like sorry to pull up yours again, Matt, but let's say you have a record and a album. You can say, you know what, screw it. I can have records and albums be equal if they have this, if they're the same artist and the same song list. They are equal. They're just one's a record and one's an album. So they are equal, but they're just different items. Not that you would, but just I'm trying to use an analogy that just fits my head. Sure. But you could say that those are equal, and so you could justify that. But in this case, a very common thing is if we're not the same class, we're not equal. That's a very common behavior. Last thing I'm going to do is user details implementation user equals user details implementation. We're going to cast O because currently we don't know what O is. So now we're going to OBJ. Sorry, we don't know that OBJ is a user details implementation. So now we're going to typecast it and save it as user. So now we can do actual .get ID, .get name, username, .get password. If we don't do that, then we can't do, because if I do here, you can see I don't have get username or get password, right? Not that I should, but I don't have get username or, well, I should have get password, yeah. But I don't have any of those getters because again, it's not typecasted. This is a generic object right now. Now that we know that because of this, we know that the two are the same class, we can typecast OBJ as a user details implementation.
Okay.
The last thing I'm going to do is return objects, and this is going to allow us to use the default behavior now. Equal ID, comma, user dot ID. So all we're going to say these are equal if they have the same user ID. So the two objects have the same user ID, even though they're two different instantiations, we will say they're equal because that's true. Even though they aren't referencing the same space in memory, if they are the same ID, they're the same user account. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's how this one's working. Is this required? I don't think this is required by Spring Security Camera if I actually do dot equals anywhere in the code, but if we do see it again, I'm drawing a blank right now. Again, I'm actually happy to introduce this because there are other times I could have introduced this and I chose against it because again, it looks kind of formulaic, but again, this is very common. This is very common then. After this line, you tend to just then typecast the item you're checking, and then you compare the fields. And see if the fields are equal. If they are, then you consider the thing equal. You could check multiple first, and if any of them fail, you then return false right away. So you could do multiple checks. We could say if user ID and username are the same, then we return true. But if any one of those aren't true, we return false. You could check multiple things, all that sort of stuff. So this is how you can customize that dot equals method and able to compare your objects in your project. There. That's it for this guy. So now we can go back to our user details service implementation, because now we have a user details implementation that is based on our user model. So again, that's all this purpose here was. We were making sure that we can create a user details item based on our user. And that's what we did here. That's what this is doing. Again, very little of this should be convertible. Should need to change for your projects and for Expression. But again, if you have other things in there and you want to keep track of it, you can add them in here. Most of the code underneath the build is pretty much just copy paste, pretty standard. All right, cool. Here, we're now going to change. Oh, not actually. We're just going to do return new user details implementation user. Right. Why not?
Saying to create a constructor. Why?
Oh, I meant to do build. Build. There we go. Why is that upset?
Cannot resolve symbol. Oh, my favorite. This Doja saying, I don't know, you figure it out. Cannot resolve that symbol.
I'm a little angry with that now. Can I not import it yet? I don't think I need to though, because they're in the same package, right?
Interclass build, but we have a build.
Implementation.
Build.
Build. Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
It's
Find
like,
it.
I think so. Yes.
What was it?
Get rid of remove the new
remove
and just
new.
do user details
Yeah.
implementation dot build.
Yeah, just
Yep.
Because we're not instantiating,
Nope.
we're just using the static method. There it is.
We're using a method. Yep. Good catch. Nice job. Yep. That was 100% it. As soon as you said it, I'm like, damn it. Ah. All right. Good. Awesome. Well done on that. That was it. Yep. That was it. 100%. In my notes. Yep. I don't see the new there. I forgot I even put the new. All right. And that's our user details implementation. So now we're able to create that user details system that is required by Spring Security for our web security config. Let's go back there for a second. I'm going to comment this out. No, I'm not going to do that. So back to our web config now. And here, we no longer want to use the user details service that is provided by Spring Security. We actually want to use our implementation. So we're going to just change this to implementation. That in? Did it import? Did it import? I don't think it did. Oh, it did. There it is. It did import. Good. That's it. By doing that, then we want to just do the last thing again here. We're going to say, okay, for the user detail service, so for the authentication manager builder, we want to use this user detail service that we've created, the implementation version. We also want to set our password encoder to, again, we have to use it, and again, we have to send it a bean. And that's when I realized later, that's why we need to do so we can't just do, what is it, new, where am I doing here? You did ask last time, can I just do new decrypt password encoder? Says I can.
Mine's yelling at me for the user details service
You changed
inside of
MPL, right?
Yes.
You imported it?
Yes.
All right, stopping. Ugh. Share.
Pull this up. It says right here, go on, that it wants a T for some reason.
What?
My
I
Thoughts
no,
exactly.
that's not right. Hold on.
Is
But
should,
well,
should that be private or shouldn't? Because I don't have
Correct.
private
Oh.
on my user details.
is it the access modifier? No, it's not the access modifier.
I
I
ended
don't
up
have mine
putting,
either, but yeah.
oh. I put IPL at the. I put IPL at the.
MPL.
Service and details implemented. You're supposed to have the service and the implemented.
The service.
On
the-
20
Oh, line 21, you're supposed to do user details service implementation.
implementation.
oh, service.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Now you have impl, so get rid of one of the impls.
Oh, there's two of them. Okay. All right.
There you go.
That was
Okay.
it. Yep.
All right. All right.
Nice
Cool.
check. Nice catch. Jim.
Thank you.
Yep, that was it. He was bringing in the user detail, not the user detail service.
Oh,
Good.
okay.
All good.
All right. Cool.
Simple stuff, but that does it. It's very picky.
Very.
So this seems to like it. For all the things I found, it wants a bean usually. So that's usually why we do the password encoder in a separate method. So we can annotate it as a bean because we want to return the instantiation. We don't want to instantiate it here, but it seems to be fine with that. So I'm tempted to say screw it. Just see if it works. Because you guys did ask about that in my original, and both of the projects I had, I just do the bean because that's what I've always seen in all the documentation. So I'm like, I'll just do it like that because that's what it does. But I'll give it a shot.
One less structure to have to build.
Let's try it.
Authenticate the filter. Will line 27 still work?
Not yet. So we haven't built the filter, but again, this is just creating it. We can try to do this later as well, but I want to keep it like that just for the moment because is there. But we are let's comment it out. We'll actually do the same thing here. We'll instead of calling authentication JWT token filter, we'll just do this again. Maybe not create the bean. We'll see. I'm curious now. But then again, no, I'm only gonna do it to one of them. Instead of doing multiple, we're just gonna do this one without the bean. We'll keep this one as bean for now, but until we actually use this method, because we don't know where this is being used yet. We're not gonna build it yet. But it's still broken because we haven't built this yet.
Mhm.
But again, I don't want to build it until we actually go to use it in actual code. We're actually assigning it somewhere and putting it in the system. So you understand what we're building and where it's going. Next thing we need to do is bean override. This one is just static code. So this one you just bring in, nothing you need to worry about. There's no custom code here. So this is template code right here. Have to put that in, but you're just going to call the super one. So this is template code. No changes there unless you want to make your own authentication manager bean thing or authentication manager, which we're not going to make an authentication manager. We do have our builder here, and this is still going to use this item, what's built here. So this gets run, and then this gets run because we modify the builder. This then runs the builder and makes the action, and then builds the application manager. So we just don't want anything else happening in between before the item is actually made. So we have that. And then last thing, and again, this is the last thing we did last time, which again is just a lot of dot notation. So this is that little fun one. That override protected void configure HTTP security rows exception And we're gonna add another item here, so we can, this might actually save us a little bit, but we don't. I found out that with this, I wanted to look a little bit at some of the other features here. There's a good chance that with this, because we're doing this now, remember how we had to keep adding at cross origin to all of our entities or all our controllers? I found out this is here. I am pretty confident that by adding that, we just set global cross origin to all of our routes, whether or not our controller has it specified. And we can set a site-wide CORS policy inside of those parentheses if we want. So we're gonna do that. And CSRF, that thing, we're gonna disable it again, so we don't wanna get into it. Exception handling. Authentication entry point. And this is gonna do our unauthorized handler, which if we go up, is our authentication entry point. So now we need our authentication entry point. So this is what we're doing here. So we're saying for our exception handling, when we have an issue with our system, when Spring Security runs into an issue with authentication, we want to do this. This is what we want to do. All right. We'll pull up that file next. And where do I think we want to put that file in JWT because we're changing this because of JWT. Yeah. So in JWT, we're going to do a new class. Auth entry point, and we're going to, just to make sure these are different from last time, we're going to do JWT at the end, just so that these are different from last time, so they don't feel the same as last time, and that way you know you're on the right branch. So you see if you see JWT in the beginning, you know you're working on auth 1. If you see JWT at the end, you're working with auth 2. All right. That help a little bit, you think?
Yeah, okay.
That makes sense. So I just make sure that you're never accidentally looking at the old one thinking it's the one you wanted, and you can, that way you have a quicker way of being able to confirm which one you're looking at. So do that. Put that file. I just do that.
You're missing a semicolon.
I don't have that. That one's not done yet, so don't worry. I appreciate that, but yeah, that's not done yet. So, all right, there we go. This is going to implement authentication entry point. Again, that's what this is. That's what this is acting as. This is acting as an authentication entry point. And so we're going to implement that item to make sure that this is our own version of it. And again, this is being utilized with our JWT system. So in order to make this work, we're going to bring in logger because we do want to make sure we log stuff to a logging system, not to our console. We want to log to the logging system. So, and we saw that logging also gives us some nice fancier kind of text down here than system out. So not just prints, logger makes it a little nicer looking. So, and then we're going to instantiate a logger. Victory logger. This does is going to key this logger to this class. So when it prints out, it'll actually identify this class as being the source of this message. Why is it yelling at me? That should be fine.
Do we have to cast that as a specific type of logger?
Hold on. Oh, I pulled in the wrong logger factory. Oopsie. Or the wrong logger. I'm supposed to do the same thing here. So I'm using the SLF4J logger factory and using the Java util logging logger. So just make sure that the two packages are the same. The one I'm familiar with is the SLF4J, which I believe comes with Springboot.
Oh, okay.
Now we're going to do override. So, let's do this. We would generate override methods. And the one we're going to override is our commence. We don't care about the overrides in the object class. We want to override our implementation. So we have to override this guy. And this is going to save us a little bit of code. But I want you guys to look at it again. So this is part of, like I said, this is part of that whole request process. A request comes in.
Oh, yes.
The very first stage is that we build a response object right away. So Spring immediately builds a response object. It then goes through the filter chain, applies all the filters, and then at the end of that is going to then deal with this this entry point. And the entry point is as it enters your controllers. So here what we're going to do is say, and be aware that this is specifically this commence is only going to trigger when we actually have an authentication exception. When at some point through our filter process, through our Spring security process that we're going to set up later, if at one of those points this fails, it will hit this. So this is never going to run if we don't fail. So do be aware of that. So we're just going to assume that we're going to, as soon as this runs, we're going to do logger.error unauthorized error auth exception dot get message. And we're going to make our life a little easier with this. We're just going to make sure we add this. From my understanding how this works, if I remember correctly, error will look in the string for these two brackets and put this, I believe it puts this inside of the brackets. We'll double check it, but it also could just be some text to say put after, but we'll see how this looks like. I can't remember. That, and then we also want to trigger the response. So one thing I want to clarify is you can actually trigger the response to go back to the request before you even hit your routes during your filters and stuff like that by using the response object. So we have this response object here. We can use this to stop all processes and say, send it back now. Don't even hit the route in my controllers. Don't even hit the controllers. At any point, we can use a response object to send the response early and stop all flow. So here we're going to do response send error HTTP servlet response .sc. Don't ask what the SC is. I think it's just like servlet controller or something like that. Unauthorized. We're just going to do, this is just part of this. This is going to be in this message is in the, this message is going to be part of the message sent back. Error authorized. We're not going to give any other information because again, we don't want to give the person trying to log in any details of why they were unauthorized or why they couldn't get through. We don't want to tell them like, hey, bad username, bad this, bad that, whatever. We don't care. You are just not authorized to be here. Stop trying. Don't, the more details you give, well, could be useful for a user that should have access and doesn't, is also useful to a hacker that should not have access and is trying to get access.
This is where you put little honeypot traps in. You can put unauthorized password and like, oh, that's a password. Like, no, it's something else.
Good, but at the same time, be careful because that could also be annoying to your users. So you want to only do that if you know that your users aren't going to see that. Not only those sniffing the packets or looking through the terminal are going to see that. Then it's a honeypot.
Are these actually coming back? These coming back to the console. We will not see these.
These will no. This message will come back to Postman because we're adding this message to the response. So Postman will see this. The logger does not. The logger stays in the backend.
But we won't see any of this stuff in the front end unless we allow it to.
Exactly. Yeah. The front end will get it. So a sniffer or someone checking the network tab under inspect. So if you have the developer tools open, use network, you can see this. But yeah, the website won't. No one on the website will see it. That's why I'm saying your users won't see this unless you display it. So that's what I'm saying. You could put an error here, but let's say you do decide to use that on your front end, then you have to be careful what you're putting. You have to put legit information then.
Yeah, true.
But 100%, if you're not showing this message to your users, then you could put a honeypot there. You could put a lie there and be fine with that. Cool. And that's it for this. Again, all this is doing is just handling our exceptions. That's it.
So you don't want this code to ever run, basically, because this is just a catch. This is just
Pretty much, but not quite, because we do want this happening if someone does go to one of our secured routes before logging in. We want to send this
I
back.
understand this, but this is like a cat. This is like a catch in case this
Yeah.
does occur. But we don't.
Yep.
But this should never run because we don't want any authorized.
Right. No one should be accessing our system unauthorized. We do want it to run if someone does via maybe accidentally. So not always malicious, but now we have that. So scroll back up here again. We have this authorization entry point. We want to use ours, which is called auth entry point. Auth entry point JWT. So just delete the whole thing. Auth entry point JWT. All right. We'll still call this the unauthorized handler because that's exactly what this. Again, auth entry point is kind of a misnomer. It doesn't really explain what it is. This variable name, I'm hoping it helps explain better what it actually is used for, what it's actually doing. The entry point unauthorized handler. Back on now. Back here. All right, so we got that. Do a .and again. And more configuration. So again, this is one configuration. Once we figure, once so what we're going to do is we did the CRS disable and we're going to do exception handling. We set the settings for the default exception handling. Since we're not going to do anything else on exception handling or authentication entry points, we do a .and to say, hey, we're moving on to another setting now. Moving on to another setting, which is going to be session management. We don't want to use session management, so we're going to disable it by doing session create policy. Again, this line right here, you're pretty much going to copy paste into yours. No customization here. This is a template line. All right, template line, template line, template line. You shouldn't be editing these lines. We use stateless, if I remember correctly. Yep, because we're not actually using session. We do want to use a session to store the state. We're not going to use session to say whether they're logged in or not. So there is no state on our session. Just let's go. I hit a button. Okay, they're there. I didn't. Okay, my screen like flashed. Like, did I just lose my notes? Nope, we're good. Okay, that's a heart attack and a half. There we go. Back to where I was. Awesome. So where'd I go? Yeah, cool. So stateless. That's it for session management. So we're done with that configuration. So that config. So we're done with session management configurations. Moving on to the next one. So we use .and to go to the next setting. Authorize requests. This is where we're going to say that certain routes are allowed. All right. I'm going to do .and matchers. So you can match up with a certain syntax. We'll say parentheses / API / auth / ***. So anything underneath the API auth folder. I think that's what I was missing yesterday when it didn't work. I just did the root directory, but since I want to do API auth, I want this kind of 2-tiered directory. We're going to use this ** to say everything underneath API auth, not just one level deep, but multiple levels deep. So I believe I understand the syntax for ANT patterns correctly. I haven't done a lot of tests on this, so I will clarify that. My understanding, though, is 1* is just within is just API auth and anything under that. It won't include any subdirectories there or subroutes. ** means anything and everything. As long as that route starts with /API /auth, this next item is applied to that. Permit all. So this means don't worry about authentication. Don't go through the authentication process. If they're not logged in, fine, let them in. All right. And I will say, if there's other routes you want to add in to this item, let's say we want to just say, you know what, they can pull all developers. You're just gonna chain on more matchers and more instructions. So let's say we're gonna do API / developers. Ooh, but I don't think I want that because the get one is not, is it? Well, you know, I'm not going to put any stars here or another slash. I was saying that route specifically is the open route. The slash number and ooh, the post might be an issue. Oh no, post would have the ID number, right? Kind of. You know, I'm going to comment that out though, because I don't know that's the best example from it all. If there's another route though that you do want to make it available to all, ooh, I know one, not developers. Geek out. I will have to check for verbs too. I know there's a way to add verbs to this, but I forgot to check it before today. And because I had my examples, I didn't think of the verbs where I want to allow one verb but not allow another verb. I didn't think of that in my head. So geek out slash. So if I'm pulling up a specific geek out, sure. I'm not gonna be able to pull up the list because again, our post is doing the same. But for example, again, let's say they want to be able to, so if you share your geek out post online, someone can click on it. They don't have to be logged in. They'll view your geek out. They have a direct link to it. They can't look at all the geek outs, but they can look at a specific geek out. Make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. That's what I'm going to say with this. Cool. Yeah. But again, I'm not going to bring that in. I don't actually care about that. I just want to show that you can add by just adding on after each set of a matcher and then the restriction on that item, you can add more. Thing is, you just make sure you want to finish it with any request, which is all others. So again, it's going to go in order. It's going to try to, whenever a request comes in, it tries to match the first one it finds and then applies that security feature to it. If none of these ant matchers trigger, then it's going to fall down to the any request. That's the catch-all. Make sense? So you could also go a secure first, where your ant matchers will follow what I'm about to type here. Dot authenticated. So you could put an ant matcher and just put certain items as authenticated. Instead of making, if your list is only a couple routes are authenticated, like only your admin routes for the person coming in to make changes, you could say that yours on your system API/admin is dot authenticated, where the rest of the site is open to the public. And you don't have to be authenticated in order to utilize it. That makes sense?
Mhm.
And there's definitely more configurations you can play with this. There is public but can be authenticated. So they can't, though you can check for an API key and pull it. And I do believe that's where we were seeing a problem yesterday, where you guys were noticing that the system was still, even though we were on a non-authenticated page, it was still talking about the bearer token. Because even you can have public pages that can be logged in. So I can go ahead and look at my profile without being logged in, but if I'm not logged in, I can't edit it, right? So I could pull my details down without being logged in, but if I am logged in, I want to pull out found more details, right? Same with guests versus logged in users. If a guest visit our site, we might want to give them only like a little bit of the users there, while as
Like Facebook has private and public pages. I can make my page public.
right. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up in a couple more minutes because I think we're going to finish this and I think we're going to stop here because I'm going to like you guys to build your models and the stuff. And I'm going to need to borrow for like 15 minutes. Anybody with Windows who can help Gabe do some MySQL installation for a couple students because they're struggling with MySQL.
Okay.
If anyone wants to go now and just kind of watch the last 5 minutes on the video, you can, but otherwise just hang on. I just told him, give me 5 minutes off the stuff. I can't really drop you guys in the middle of off. Because we just want, I wanted to do the filter quick, and that's going to be the last thing we do. Well, maybe not, because actually when we go to the auth filter, that's going to be it. Well, I'll leave it with that. It's the last thing we need to bring in, this, and we'll actually do that on Thursday. Because the last item, so this is the last thing about this chain. When we're setting in those features, we can't and chain on filters. And this is just, you would run this each line of having a filter. So we're going to do an HTTP, add filters before. And so again, this is before the endpoint, before the routes, like that. I'm going to go ahead and add on our authentication token filter, comma, username, password authentication. Fun thing. Username, password authentication filter dot class. There we go. That. And that's it for this thing. We're going to build this on Thursday. And that should be, and once we build all this stuff, that should be everything we need. And we should be able to finish this on Thursday and also hook it up to our developer class and actually see it in action. All right.
Mhm.
That's what we're hoping to do on Thursday. So what I want to say is get this working, get this into your Expressian app, and don't worry about adding it to your personal project yet, but get this, what we've done so far, in your Expressian app. So your models and the repos and the file here and this file here. We only have 2 more files for JWT, by the way. So not much more to add, which is really, really nice. Like 2 more files we're adding to our system for this to work.
Can you just
Other
scroll a
than
little
the,
bit down?
oh, 3, sorry, 2 more, 3 more, sorry. We also have the controller. Was that Eridan?
Can you scroll down a little bit?
Sorry, yep, I scrolled up on you, yeah. Again, this code won't work, so I highly recommend that if you are following along, put this in a branch. Do not commit this to your main branch. You never want to commit not working code to your main branch. So you can just do git checkout -b at any time as long as you haven't committed yet, and all the changes will follow you to that new branch.
Okay.
Then you can commit, and then you can add, commit, and push that branch if you want to push the branch. You don't necessarily have to push branches. The branches do not contribute to your green squares.
So that filter should be an error on line 55, right?
Yeah, because we don't, the method up here is broken too.
Okay. Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
That's broken because this is broken.
Just-
Yep. Yep, that's expected.
Okay.
Once we set that up, it'll be good to run. It'll be good to roll.
The user detail, like when we were having the thing compare it, what is it? Is it a JSON file it's returning and that it's actually doing, or is it like just an encoded piece of data that it just can just manipulate or just understand?
Sorry, one more time.
Like when we were generating the user detail,
This thing.
when we made the new one, when we made a new one back, we're making all this back. Is this a JSON thing that it reads, or is it just a object? It's just basically an object in memory.
It's basically just an object in memory, but because there's a chance that it could get sent back because part of Spring Security, and again, this is just a safety mechanism, we do want to do this. So
Yeah,
there
no,
is a, we are never expecting this to ever get sent, but if somehow it does, don't include the password. That's all this is.
but the object equal object, that is yeah, right here, right, I'll go above, yeah, right here, line 35, this whole method here is just
Yeah.
generating a new object, right? And so it's just
Yeah, it's generating the user detail implementation object from the user object. So we're giving it a user and we're generating a user detail implementation class.
What is this user detail implement? What's this user?
It's part of Spring Security's user details requirements. Spring Security requires user detail objects in order to validate someone.
It's a special
So
object. It's
yes.
a special object we generate.
if you notice in our web security config, we do this as part of one of our filters,
Yeah,
using password authentication filter. This is going to check out the user detail system that we've created. And so it's going to get that system and going to look into that. I'm going to see as we go through the process of creating our filter that we're going to do stuff with the user details service, the user details system again.
Mhm.
We're going to be doing more with the user details service system.
so it's basically a special object class that
Yeah.
that Spring Security uses to
Authenticate and validate. Yep.
Okay. All right,
It's
that's
how
all.
Spring Security authenticates validates. Like I said, if we weren't using Spring Security, we wouldn't need that. We would just pull the filter system we use. We would just pull that out ourselves. So I do want to clarify that this stuff right here, all of this stuff actually is Spring Web, by the way. So this is actually Spring Web. as well as security included. So you see here, Spring Security, all this stuff, right? Yeah, but it's also included with Spring Web as well. It's part of Spring Web as well. But it's also, what this is going to do is override the default behavior of Spring Web with Spring Security Web. So Spring Web has similar stuff here with this stuff, right? With some of these things. But yeah, we're kind of overriding Spring Web's default behavior with this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it? Oh, yeah, because if you're actually doing, because as I recall, when you're doing actual like Java web stuff in Spring, there is a web config file below.
Yeah.
On the outside this whole project file, it's its own little
Yeah.
environment, its own little world.
Yeah, it has a config file as well, but again, we don't mess with that because we don't need to change any of this behavior.
But we're not writing JP, or we're not
Yeah.
writing.
But again, if you look at this light up in here again, so this kind of section, this is what Spring Security needs in order to work. This is our stuff. This is Spring Security stuff that it needs. Spring Security uses a user detail and a username password authentication token to validate the user. Without the Spring token, it won't validate it, even though it's going to be a token we technically generate consistently. Again, something you'll probably notice, and I remember, I think we still do this, I think we did it last time too, is we're going to save this token to in memory on the system. So it within a certain small time frame, it won't have to evaluate our code and token and generate a new one, but every so often it will. But yeah, we'll talk more about it when we actually build this system. We built this, we built this, we built that, we have that, we built this now, and we built this. We now need to create this guy, the once per request filter. And within the filter, that's also going to create our kind of JDBT implementer that's going to create our token and stuff as well. So we're going to have our token creator and decoder. So we're going to see those two things created. And the last thing we're going to create is our auth controller. So you have 3 files left, 3 classes, and we'll have our authentication system implemented. But I want you to implement all the Spring Security stuff today. So from today and tomorrow, start building what we have here into your Expressian app. Not into your personal projects yet. That you can keep working on as is. We'll try to add this to your Expressian app. That'll be the homework for Thursday as well. You'll be able to work on that on Thursday, and I'll come in and try to help out anyone I can if you're struggling with adding stuff in or anything that did not work. So follow along. A lot of this code is going to be this almost identical in your Expressian app. I don't see you guys doing anything extra in your user model or your role model. And even your role model, which sounds fun. I guess you could do, the 3 models would be a customer, customer, employee, and admin. I guess you could do. So you would have 3 roles as well. Yeah, you would have 3 roles as well. Minimum. You could also add a store manager. So you could have a employee, store manager, and admin, I guess, if you really wanted to. But if you want to just keep it simple and keep it kind of similar to this, because that's kind of the goal of that app, you can be more fancy with your personal project. Just bring in the 3 roles, customer. So role _ customer, role _ manager, and role _ admin, or employee, role _ employee. Sorry.
Sure.
So those 3 should be good enough for your system for the Expressian app. Employees can add or remove cars or change the location of cars. Admins can add cars to the system, I guess, or add locations or add stores. And customers can submit rentals. Sound good?
Mhm.
All right. That being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Who can help out Gabe?
I can.
How many students you have?